where this podcast is starting is with Hunter to talk a little Charlotte 49er football, because Bennett and I, we're not totally plugged in with what's happening down there in North Carolina. So we brought on Hunter. Hunter, how are you doing today?
Doing good, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on and talk about the 49ers. Jack's a big 49er believer. I'm more of a skeptic. But I was curious if you could take us through how they've looked in camp so far. I know they brought in a ton of transfers, especially Power 4 transfers.
Definitely. 71 new players on this team is kind of, it's a lot like last year too. Biff's first year. It felt like more last year, but a ton of new faces, kind of centering around quarterback Max Brown. He's a Florida transfer. That's what they're hoping for. That's what they invested in the NIL for. And looking at his film from Florida, watching him at camp so far for the Niners, he's been here since the spring. I think he's definitely a huge step up from where they were last year, which I think kind of leads to the believers aspect of where you could go with this team, because knowing Biff Poggi, they want to run the ball, open up the play action. But like I say, a ton of new faces. So seeing them gel together has been really interesting so far.
Yeah, I think it was Biff last year where was it the hat or a shirt that he made that just said run the damn ball or something like that? And
Yeah.
he was really big on that. I mean, it may have played into the fact that at times Trexler Ivy, I think, was the starter who was started the year as the fourth string quarterback. But with Max Brown, what have you seen out of him to kind of give Charlotte fans some hope? And what have you seen out of him that enhances the quarterback room?
Definitely. So last year, you're right. Trexler and then Jalen Jones kind of split reps, and it was almost like two playbooks, man. Like one, if you see number 11 coming on the field, you know it's probably a short pass. If it's number 4 back there, it's probably a quarterback run. Could bet pretty well on how to defend those. So having Max Brown, he can definitely use his legs, and he can push the ball down the field, which this team really hasn't had in the past couple seasons. And I think that's been what I've been most impressed by with him is his accuracy on the deep ball and then ability to kind of break the pocket. You guys know with like spring and then fall camp, you're not hitting the quarterbacks, especially the guy that's supposed to take you to this next level. So the reps aren't necessarily live, and it's been interesting when the whistle is blown and when it's not at times to know kind of how good he can be. And like, can he make that guy miss in the open field versus what it looks like at practice? But he definitely can use his legs, extend plays. And I think the offensive line is taking some time to adjust to that too. This is a whole new group. I think 4 Power 4 transfers surrounding Johnny King, the center who's returning. And they're kind of realizing, okay, it's not just 2 or 3 step drop, get the ball out. He can scramble, he can get outside the pocket and make some off schedule throws. And I think that will be the difference, a huge difference in this offense versus last year.
They still want to run, like you mentioned. Obviously, Max Brown can run. But what's the running back position look like? I know Biff, at least in some of the things I've heard, is pretty high on the group, which again includes a bunch of Power 4 guys.
Yeah, definitely. So they brought in Cartavius Norton from Iowa State. He's kind of been the main. He'll get the first team reps split with Teron Kelman, who's back from last year. And then they have this guy, I kind of think he's the wild card in the room, is Hassan Wilson. He was a walk-on last year, but in the game against Memphis, it was like a heartbreaking loss for Charlotte. He rushed for like 198 yards and 3 touchdowns as coming into the season 5th or 6th on the depth chart, and then comes second in program history with nearly 200 rushing yards. So he's back. He's had a really good camp. And then they have this true freshman from Tampa Tech, Rod Gainey Jr. I think he's going to be good. He's kind of working with the threes now, but you can tell they all get a handful of reps in each group. It's just kind of seeing where the pieces fall. But definitely, I would say a much improved running back room and a really deep room that I feel like there's just so many good running backs coming out of high school.
Yeah.
A lot of the rooms are really deep through college football, but like I do feel good about this one versus last year.
You sound like a running backs don't matter type of guy. You can just go in and replenish with high school.
I wouldn't say that. The main reason I feel good about this room is because I think they actually all do different things. There's like Norton is your more power back. He's 5'11", 225. If it's 3rd and 1, that's the guy that's in the game. Henry Rutledge is a guy I didn't mention, but he's first team All AAC in punt returning. He can also be used as like a scat back. And then totally blanking on his name. Rod Gainey Jr. is kind of like the speedster. He can really has that breakaway speed. So I think they all have different skill sets, which makes me think there is a chance for this to be a super deep room.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, sorry to interrupt, Bennett.
No, go ahead.
Ryan Osborne, the defensive coordinator, I mean, he had himself a pretty good defense despite them being on the field a lot last year. The offense never really holding up their side of the bargain, but that defense played extremely well game in and game out. What have you seen from the defensive side of the ball, and do you expect them to take a step forward defensively under Ryan Osborne?
Definitely. I think from where Charlotte was, basically since the Will Healy era started, has been really rough on defense most of the time. Like they were, I think, 131st out of 133 teams now 2 years ago, and they climbed into the mid 50s this past year. So you feel really good about where they got to. But the biggest problem now is they're replacing both their inside linebackers, Nakai Hill-Green, who's at Colorado now, and then Demetrius Knight at South Carolina. And then Yabi Okianoma, who was, I guess, their best defensive end last year. He's graduated, moved on. So they're replacing their 3 top tacklers. So when you think about that initially, it's like, all right, who is it going to be? They've got some guys coming back, a lot of portal additions. I think this group can be as good as it was last year. I think improving much further would be tough just based off of kind of the linebacking room, because in my mind, you need a really good inside linebacker to play good defense. I'm an Eagles fan. It feels like they never have good inside linebackers, and it always pisses me off. So it's like, but yeah, I think how they replace that room, and then how Stone Handy, he was kind of the secondary guy on the edge last year, how he develops, like the coaches have been super high on him, so have the players. And today was actually his best day of practice in my mind so far. So how he continues to grow, and if he can wreck games and actually be that kind of top of the opponent scouting report guy, I think the defense can have that same type of success this year.
Interesting. Yeah, we're big Stone Handy believers, in large part due to his production, but then also he's got a mean headshot on the roster.
Yeah, he got a scary headshot on the roster.
Yeah, he's not one that you want to mess with. I'll go on record for that. Yeah.
So what do we think about expectations this year for Charlotte? I know they're picked toward the bottom of the American. You've got, you look at the betting markets, I don't think they're particularly high on them. Is a bowl game realistic? Is that sort of the goal? I guess what are the expectations internally for the team?
Definitely. So I think, and this is probably the best way that I can put it, because when you look at their schedule, I think there's one just flat out gimme win, and that's Gardner-Webb in week 3. Outside of that, it's pretty tough, right? JMU, big game. Then they're going to Carolina, going to Indiana. And then their actual conference schedule, there's not like a Tulsa on there, or a Temple on there, or teams that you feel like really good about. I think the floor of this team is higher than last year. I'm still waiting to see what that ceiling looks like, because the receiver room is still a question. Who is going to be that guy? Like when it's 3rd and 10, who are you going to? But I definitely think a bowl game is attainable, but how they start the season is super important, because if you get to 1-4, like I say, you talk about JMU, Carolina, Indiana. If you go 0-3 in that span, and then you head to Rice and drop that game, you're sitting at that 1-4 mark. It's like, all right, you get into the losing the locker room type of part of the season. But if you get a couple of those games and you're sitting at 3-3 in that first bye week, you feel a little dangerous. So I think the floor of this group is much higher than last year. They have a real quarterback, and I think that inspires belief in a locker room. That was the biggest thing last year, guys, is like they would go 3 and out, and you knew that quarterback was out of the game and it was someone else's turn. And you just can't really, like, that doesn't inspire confidence in your team when the margin for error is so little. So having someone like Max, who you feel really good about, I think that will play towards improving the defense, because that was the deal last year. It's like they would go 3 and out and the defenses were right back, or they would throw a horrendous interception and the defense is on a short field. And it's like, it's hard to play complementary football if your offense can't even give the defense a breather, let alone score more than 17.5 points a game. So my thought on it is is if the offense can get to 25 a game, which no bowl team in the AAC was under 25 a game last year. That's the threshold. If you can score that, yeah, bowl game them up. That would be super fun for the program. They need that. But I mean, adding a touchdown to last year's total is tough in general for any school. But I think how they fare, where that ceiling is going to be on Max Brown's shoulders. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what kind of made the defense so amazing last year, despite, not necessarily having like these gaudy numbers, but the offense never really held their weight last year. And if Max Brown can do that, that's what I'm really excited for. But Hunter, I got to know, will Jerry Richardson Stadium be rocking on August 31st? Because this is something Bennett and I have gone back and forth. I think it's going to be a huge home field advantage where Bennett's like, they're 1-5 over the whatever. Like they haven't really had that much success. But I don't know. I keep looking back to the 2021 Duke game.
Yeah. So that's the thing is I guess last year South Carolina State was the only home game that they won. That was the opener. And it was a sellout for that game. That was Bip Poggi's first game, and he had came into Charlotte with a lot of claims, right? We're going to win the AAC. We're going to do a lot of stuff. And this year it's like the complete flip. He's not saying anything, which I think is good, right? You went out and you did all this talk last year and you were what you were. So now it's like, okay, how do you build on that? But as far as what the atmosphere will look like, yeah, man, I think people are really excited about Max Brown. They're really excited about some of the hires. They've got Dre Bly on staff as a defensive analyst. They've got Tim Brewster coming from North Carolina. They're saying and doing the right things. And then they've got Steve Wilkes, who just joined the program. It's like a super weird title. It's like voluntary advisor. So he's not technically on the staff, but he's still at the practices and stuff. But I mean, he was the interim head coach with the Panthers, was the DC for the San Francisco 49ers. Like he's a reputable guy. People are excited about the team. So I definitely think it will be jumping. It'll definitely be sold out. I would be shocked if it wasn't.
I've been trying to tell Bennett.
I wasn't disputing a sellout. I just thought there could be some purple, but we'll see. I think it's a huge game for both teams, and I think Hunter did a nice job of phrasing it where, the direction of each team's season can change drastically based on week one's result.
And I always feel funny saying this because it's like it is week one, but I really think that game will tell a lot about, especially like on Charlotte's end. I know JMU's new head coach, new quarterback, a lot of new faces. But for Charlotte's the same type of deal. And like I mentioned, the non-conference schedules. All right, you're going to North Carolina after this, and you're going to Indiana, who has Signetti now. So it's like, all right, they're definitely going to take a step forward. Can Charlotte make that game fun? Can they steal a win? That's I can't wait, guys. It's not that long.
No, it should be a great game. I'm looking forward to both sides. And Max Brown is a hell of a wild card when you've got a elite level quarterback that hasn't maybe shown it yet, but his traits are right there. So if he does click, I mean, Charlotte becomes obviously a much better team than maybe people expect.
No doubt. And I don't know. I think you mentioned him being the wild card. I keep going back to Stone Handy. Like you guys are right. His picture on there is scary, but he's got to be a game wrecker for them because the secondary is better.
Yeah,
definitely better. They've got guys in from quite a few Power 4 schools. But like I said, the inside linebacker and then what Handy can do off the edge because they need some, like the pass rush is going to make or break that defense.
Yeah, it should be. I'm very excited to see how Charlotte's season plays out. I'm excited to see how this game plays out. Bennett, do you have any other questions?
No, I guess the other thing that I think is really fascinating is Charlotte's early season schedule. I think JMU fans are going to actually pay a lot more attention to Charlotte after week one, too, because they also play Carolina, I think like 2 weeks before JMU does. They both play Gardner-Webb. And then I think Indiana, Charlotte's somewhat interesting with Signetti. So it's interesting that they play each other and then also share a lot of commonalities, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That'll put every other opponent that you just mentioned is going to be watching that film like a whole.
It's going to be something. But Hunter, where can JMU fans follow along with you to get all the latest insights onto the 49er squad?
Definitely. So, all right, for the Charlotte Observer on Twitter @theobserver, and then my personal is Hunter_Bailey45. And then we do a podcast called the Highway 49 podcast. So definitely check it out. Looking forward to this, man. It's like I say, it's not too much longer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Hunter.
Definitely, guys. Take it easy.
See ya. All right, I'm telling you, man.
Good stuff, man.
I'm telling you, it's going to be Jerry's house. I don't know if that's what they call it. Jerry Richardson. I think they've actually tried to take some space away from Jerry Richardson, but it's going to be rocking.
I'm interested to see what the atmosphere is like. I don't doubt that Charlotte's got good fans, man. Their basketball student section's awesome. So I'm interested to see what it is. I also think JMU's crowd will be noticeable and could make an impact, at least for the team. Like, I do think there will be a lot of purple. Daniel Merriman's getting in there saying a lot of JMU students are going as well. Yeah,
he said this game could be a 65-35 split of UNCC and JMU. I wonder if he's saying 65% JMU, but it's also not UNCC, Daniel. It is Charlotte.
He's saying Charlotte. Oh, 65. Based on the order he put them.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, should be a great game.